March 17th, 1863. Bethlem Royal Hospital, London. Dr. William Harrington pushed open the door to Ward C at dawn, expecting to begin his morning rounds. Instead, he discovered 23 dead rabbits arranged in a perfect circle on the stone floor. Each animal's neck had been twisted with surgical precision. Each pair of glass eyes stared upward at the vaulted ceiling. And in the center of this macabre display sat patient number 147, Eleanor Blackwood, her nightgown soaked in blood that wasn't her own, humming a children's lullaby. The rabbits had been part of a revolutionary new treatment. Moral management, they called it. Compassionate care through interaction with gentle creatures, the most progressive psychiatric therapy of the Victorian age. But the truth was far more terrifying than anyone could have imagined. Before we uncover the truth about the Bedlam Asylum therapy rabbits and how 1863 London's most progressive mental hospital patients strangled their pets during violent episodes, make sure to subscribe to the Fear Abbey and ring that notification bell. We dive deep into history's darkest corners every week. And tell us in the comments, where are you watching from? We love hearing from our community of mystery seekers around the world. Victorian London, 1862. The city sprawls across the Thames like a living organism, choking on its own industrial breath. Charles Dickens walks these streets, documenting the misery. The American Civil War rages across the Atlantic, disrupting cotton imports and throwing thousands into unemployment. The Great Stink of 1858 still lingers in collective memory, a reminder that beneath the veneer of progress, London festers. But this is also the age of reform. Prince Albert has recently died, leaving Queen Victoria in mourning blacks, and the nation responds with a peculiar mixture of sentimentality and scientific advancement. The lunacy laws have been reformed. The old ways of treating the insane, chains, beatings, public spectacle, are finally supposedly behind us. Bethlem Royal Hospital stands as a monument to this progress. Known colloquially as Bedlam for centuries, the institution has shed its reputation as a tourist attraction, where the wealthy paid to gawk at the mad. The new medical superintendent, Dr. Charles Hood, has implemented what he calls moral management, treatment based on kindness, occupation, and environment rather than restraint. Dr. William Harrington arrives at Bedlam in October 1862, fresh from studying the revolutionary work of French physician Philippe Pinel. Harrington is 34, ambitious, and convinced that mental illness is not moral failing but medical condition. His notebooks overflow with observations about the therapeutic potential of animal companionship. In France, he has seen patients calm themselves by stroking cats. In the countryside, he has observed how troubled children gentle when given responsibility for livestock. He proposes an experiment to Dr. Hood: introduce rabbits to the female wards. Rabbits are soft, unthreatening, easy to care for. Their very presence might soothe disturbed minds. Their care might give structure to disordered days. Dr. Hood, eager to cement Bedlam's reputation as a progressive institution, agrees. He secures funding from a philanthropic society. The experiment will begin with Ward C, housing 20 female patients with diagnoses ranging from melancholia to puerperal insanity to moral degeneracy. The rabbits arrive on November 3, 1862, 12 of them, various breeds, purchased from a breeder in Whitechapel, white Angoras with pink eyes, brown Dutch rabbits with distinctive markings, a massive Flemish giant that the patients immediately name Goliath. The animals are installed in hutches along the south wall of the day room, where morning light streams through barred windows. The patients react with unexpected joy. Even the most withdrawn women approach the cages. They ask to hold the rabbits, to feed them, to clean their hutches. Harrington notes in his journal, patient 138, previously catatonic, spoke her first words in 6 months. Soft. So soft. Patient 147, violent upon admission, sits quietly for an hour with a rabbit in her lap. Patient 147. Eleanor Blackwood, a woman who will haunt Harrington's nightmares for the rest of his life. Eleanor is 26 when admitted in August 1862. Her commitment papers list the cause as puerperal insanity following stillbirth. Her husband, a shipping clerk named Thomas Blackwood, signs the documents with a shaking hand. The admitting physician notes, patient exhibits extreme agitation, claims to hear infant crying, attempted to harm herself with knitting needles, danger to self, requires immediate confinement. But in Harrington's care, Eleanor seems to improve. She takes particular attachment to a white Angora rabbit she names Pearl. She brushes its fur with gentle strokes. She talks to it in whispers. When Harrington observes her during these sessions, Eleanor appears almost normal, a young woman tending a pet, nothing more sinister than that. What Harrington doesn't know, what he cannot see, is that Eleanor isn't petting Pearl. She's practicing, measuring the delicate bones of the rabbit's neck, feeling where vertebrae connect, learning exactly how much pressure a fragile thing can withstand before it breaks. The first incident occurs on December 8, 1862, a Sunday. The ward is quiet, most staff attending chapel services. An attendant discovers patient 131, Mary Ashford, weeping over a rabbit with a broken neck. The animal lies twisted in Mary's arms. Mary swears she only squeezed too hard, didn't mean to hurt it, got confused, thought it was a pillow. Dr. Harrington examines the rabbit. The injury is severe, the neck nearly decapitated from the body. This requires significant force, but Mary is a small woman, frail from years of poor nutrition and laudanum treatments. Could she generate such violence? He records the incident as accidental. He arranges for the rabbit to be buried in the hospital grounds. He does not remove the remaining rabbits. That would be admitting failure, and William Harrington has not come this far to fail. December 22, 1862. Winter solstice, the shortest day of the year. Patient 152, Victoria Green, is found standing in the courtyard at dawn, her feet bare on frozen stones, holding a brown Dutch rabbit. The rabbit is dead. Its eyes have been removed. Victoria stares at Harrington with perfect lucidity and says, "They shouldn't see. It's better if they can't see what's coming." Victoria is 29, admitted for religious mania. Before her breakdown, she was a governess in a respectable household. Now she speaks in biblical prophecies, claims angels visit her cell, refuses food she believes has been poisoned by demons. The dead rabbit swings from her hands like a pendulum. "What did you do, Victoria?" Harrington asks, his breath misting in the cold air. "I saved it," she replies. "Like Abraham saved Isaac. The Lord provides the ram instead. But I had only the rabbit." The attendants take Victoria inside. Harrington examines the animal. The eyes weren't removed. They were pressed inward, pushed into the skull with tremendous force. He feels his stomach turn. He orders Victoria placed in isolation for her own safety and the safety of others. But he still doesn't end the program. The therapeutic benefits for the other patients are too significant. He simply bars Victoria from accessing the animals. January 9, 1863. Patient 145, Catherine Moore, experiences a violent episode during the night. Attendants rush to her cell, awakened by her screams. They find her covered in scratches, bleeding from dozens of small wounds. On her bed lies a dead rabbit, its claws broken, its fur matted with Catherine's blood. Catherine is gasping, thrashing. "It tried to burrow," she says, "into my chest, to get to my heart. I had to stop it. I had to make it stop." The ate. Don't see something else. A woman who has self-inflicted wounds to justify killing an animal. Catherine has a history of deception, admitted for moral insanity after abandoning her children. She cannot be trusted. She is moved to the secure ward. Harrington examines the rabbit. The scratches on Catherine are real, deep, consistent with the animal's claws. Could the rabbit have attacked her? Rabbits are prey animals, not predators. But if cornered, frightened, trapped in a small space with an agitated human, perhaps it fought back. Perhaps Catherine defended herself. He wants to believe this. He needs to believe this. January 28, 1863. 3 rabbits are found dead in their hutches during morning inspection. No obvious cause of death. No wounds. No signs of distress. They simply stopped living sometime during the night, as if their hearts simultaneously decided to quit beating. The veterinarian Harrington consult suggests poison, but tests reveal nothing. Natural causes then. Weak constitutions, the stress of the hospital environment. But the attendant who discovered them, a woman named Sarah Pruitt who has worked at Bedlam for 15 years, tells Harrington something strange. "I heard singing last night, around 3 in the morning. From Ward C like a choir, but all one voice, and then it stopped sudden-like. That's when they died, I reckon." "Which patient was singing?" Harrington asks. Sarah shakes her head. "Couldn't tell. Echoes strange in these old halls. Could have been any of them. Could have been all of them." February 14, 1863, St. Valentine's Day. Patient 138, the previously catatonic woman who spoke her first words to a rabbit, is discovered attempting to drown the Flemish giant Goliath in a washing basin. It takes 3 attendants to pull her away. The rabbit survives, traumatized but alive. Patient 138's name is Dorothy Wright. She is 42. admitted after the death of her husband left her unable to speak or care for herself. The rabbits brought her back to language, to interaction, to life. Now she screams as they restrain her. It knows too much. It sees into me. It has to die before it tells. Harrington interviews Dorothy after she's been sedated. Her words tumble out in a rush. They're not rabbits. They never were. They're vessels, collectors. They gather our sickness, absorb it through their fur, through their skin, and when they're full, they have to be emptied, crushed, wrung out like sponges. Don't you see? It's the treatment working. We're supposed to kill them. That's how we get better. This is delusion, Harrington knows. The paranoid fantasy of a disturbed mind. But something in Dorothy's words burrows into him like a splinter. He begins reviewing his notes, looking for patterns. Of the 12 rabbits, 7 are now dead. Of the 20 patients in Ward C, 8 have been involved in incidents with the animals. But those 8 patients, he checks their charts. They're improving. Their symptoms are lessening. The violent episodes are contained to the rabbits, not directed at themselves or staff. Mary Ashford hasn't attempted suicide in 2 months. Victoria Green eats regularly now. Even Eleanor Blackwood seems calmer, more present, almost ready for discharge. Could Dorothy be right? Not about vessels and collectors, but about the underlying mechanism. Could the act of killing the rabbit serve as some kind of cathartic release? A transference of violent impulses onto safe targets? The thought horrifies him. It's barbaric, medieval. It goes against every principle of moral management. And yet, March 3rd, 1863. Patient 147, Eleanor Blackwood, requests a private meeting with Dr. Harrington. She has been a model patient for weeks. She asks when she might be discharged, might return to her husband, might try again for a child. Harrington is encouraged. He discusses discharge plans. Perhaps in a month, he suggests, after one more evaluation by Dr. Hood. Eleanor smiles. It's a beautiful smile, warm and genuine. Thank you, doctor, she says. The rabbits have saved me, Pearl especially. She's helped me understand what I need to do. And what is that, Eleanor? Let go, she says simply. Let go of the baby that never breathed. Accept that some things aren't meant to live. Make peace with death as a mercy. Harrington finds this profound. He notes it in her file as evidence of psychological breakthrough. He should have listened more carefully to her words. If this story is giving you chills, hit that like button. Share this with someone who loves dark mysteries. Because what happens next will change everything we thought we knew about therapeutic treatment in Victorian England. Let's discover what Dr. Harrington found on that terrible morning in March. March 17, 1863, 5:47 a.m. Dr. William Harrington climbs the stairs to Ward C with a particular lightness in his step. Spring is coming to London. The worst of winter's grip has loosened. He carries in his bag a positive evaluation for Eleanor Blackwood, recommending her discharge within the fortnight. The corridor is quiet. The attendants are preparing breakfast in the kitchen. The patients are still sleeping, or should be. Harrington notices the door to the day room stands ajar. He didn't leave it that way last night. He's certain of it. He pushes it open. The smell hits him first. Copper and waste and something else, something organic and wrong. The morning light slants through the barred windows, illuminating the scene in terrible clarity. 23 dead rabbits arranged in a perfect circle. Each one precisely positioned, nose pointing toward the center. Each neck twisted at the same angle, approximately 90 degrees he will later measure. Each pair of eyes reflecting the dawn like tiny mirrors. The remaining rabbits from the original 12. The 11 new ones Harrington purchased last week to replace the dead. One he borrowed from Dr. Hood's personal stock just yesterday. All dead, all arranged, all killed with expert precision. And in the center of the circle sits Eleanor Blackwood, patient 147, nightgown soaked in blood. The blood isn't hers. The blood belongs to the rabbits, smeared on her hands, her arms, her face. She's placed her hands on each animal, pressed her palms to their still warm bodies, painted herself in their death. She's humming. It's the same lullaby Harrington heard his own mother sing when he was a child. Rock-a-bye baby on the treetop. When the wind blows, the cradle will rock. Eleanor, Harrington whispers. His voice doesn't sound like his own. She looks up at him. Her eyes are perfectly clear, perfectly sane, perfectly aware of what she's done. Good morning, doctor, she says pleasantly. I've completed my treatment. I'm ready to go home now. Harrington stumbles backward. His shoulder hits the doorframe. He hears footsteps behind him, attendants responding to the noise. They crowd into the doorway, gasping, cursing, one of them vomiting into her apron. Get her out of there, Harrington manages. Get her to isolation, don't hurt her, just remove her from this room. The attendants approach Eleanor carefully. She doesn't resist. She rises gracefully, steps over the circle of rabbits without disturbing their arrangement, and walks calmly toward the door. As she passes Harrington, she pauses. "They all wanted to die," she says conversationally. "That's what Pearl taught me. Everything small and soft and helpless wants to die, really. It's a mercy to help them. My baby understood that. That's why it chose not to breathe, and now I understand too." They lead her away. Harrington stands in the doorway, unable to enter, unable to look away from the circle of dead animals. He begins counting them again, certain he's miscounted. 23. There should only be 23 rabbits total in the hospital. But he counts 23 dead ones, and in the hutches along the wall, he can see at least 4 more alive. Cowering in the corners of their cages, 27 rabbits. Where did the extras come from? He approaches the hutches. The surviving rabbits are terrified, pressing themselves against the back walls. He examines them, looking for identifying marks. He recognizes none of them. These aren't from the breeder in Whitechapel. These aren't from Dr. Hood's stock. Sarah Pruitt appears at his elbow. "Those are wild ones," she says quietly. "From the courtyard. I've seen them around the grounds for weeks. Someone's been catching them, bringing them inside." "Who?" Harrington asks, though he already knows the answer. "All of them," Sarah says. "The patients. They've been hunting rabbits at night, through the windows, the gaps in the walls, luring them with food, keeping them in their cells until there were enough." "Enough for what?" Sarah looks at the circle of corpses. "For this. Whatever this is meant to be." Harrington forces himself to examine the dead rabbits more closely. Now that he looks carefully, he can see the progression of skill. The earliest kills are crude, necks broken but twisted unevenly, bones protruding through skin. The later ones are surgical, precise, almost professional in their execution. They practiced. The patients practiced killing, refining their technique with each rabbit, learning from each other, perfecting the method. And he gave them the tools. He introduced the first victims. He created the opportunity. On the floor beside the circle, Harrington notices something else. Scratched into the stone with what must have been a fingernail or a shard of metal, a message. "The small deaths prepare us for the large ones. Thank you for teaching us, Doctor." The handwriting is Eleanor's. He recognizes it from her admission papers, from the letters she wrote to her husband, letters Harrington approved and sent because they seemed so rational, so healthy, so normal. He runs from the room. He barely makes it to the courtyard before his stomach empties itself. He vomits until there's nothing left, then dry heaves while the morning sun climbs higher over Bedlam's walls. Above him, in the windows of Ward C, faces press against the glass. The other patients are awake now, watching. Some are crying, some are laughing. Some are expressionless, blank as dolls, and in one window he sees Eleanor Blackwood, already secured in an isolation cell. She places her palm against the glass. Even from the courtyard, Harrington can see the blood still staining her hand. She smiles at him, warm and genuine and utterly mad. He closes his eyes, but the image remains, burned into his vision, 23 dead rabbits in a perfect circle, and a woman humming a lullaby at their center. The investigation begins within hours. Dr. Charles Hood summons the hospital governors, the Metropolitan Police and legal counsel. The discovery in Ward C cannot be contained. Too many people have seen it, and Bedlam, despite its reforms, still attracts gossip and scandal like a corpse attracts flies. Detective Inspector James Whitmore of the Metropolitan Police arrives at noon. He's a pragmatic man, accustomed to London's routine horrors, murders in Whitechapel, infanticides in the slums, bodies pulled from the Thames. But the circle of dead rabbits disturbs him in a way those human crimes do not. "It's the arrangement," he tells Harrington during the initial interview. "Murder for passion, for money, for madness, I understand those, but this required planning, coordination. These are insane women, yes?" "Yes," Harrington says quietly. "Then who organized them? Who taught them to kill with such precision? Who convinced them to collect wild rabbits for weeks, hiding them from staff, waiting for the right moment?" Harrington has no answers. He provides his journals, his patient notes, his observations of the rabbit therapy program. Whitmore reads them with increasing incredulity. "You gave them animals to kill," Whitmore says flatly. "You placed weapons, the hands of violent mad women, and called it treatment." "That wasn't the intent," Harrington protests. "The therapy was meant to soothe, to calm, to provide gentle companionship. And yet here we are," Whitmore gestures at the day room, where police are documenting the scene, measuring the circle, collecting the bodies. 23 dead animals and a woman covered in blood. "Tell me, doctor, what would have happened if she'd run out of rabbits?" The question hangs in the air like a noose. The patient interviews begin that afternoon. Whitmore insists on conducting them himself, with Harrington present to evaluate mental competency. They start with Eleanor Blackwood. Eleanor sits calmly in the interview room, hands folded in her lap. She's been washed, dressed in a clean hospital gown. Her hair is neatly braided. She looks, Harrington thinks with horror, healthier than she's appeared in months. Her cheeks have color. Her eyes are bright. She radiates a kind of peaceful contentment. "Miss Blackwood," Whitmore begins. "Can you tell me what happened this morning?" "I completed my treatment," Eleanor says simply. "Dr. Harrington's therapy worked exactly as intended. I confronted my demons. I processed my grief. I'm cured." "By killing rabbits?" "By understanding death," Eleanor corrects gently. "My baby died before it could live. I couldn't accept that. I kept hearing it cry, feeling it move inside me even though it was gone. Dr. Harrington gave me Pearl, and Pearl taught me what death really is. Not a tragedy, not a punishment, just an ending. Clean and final and merciful." "So you killed Pearl?" "Eventually, yes. But not first. First I had to learn. Mary taught me about pressure points. Victoria showed me about the eyes, how looking can trap a soul, prevent it from leaving. Catherine demonstrated how even small creatures fight to survive, how you have to be firm, committed. Dorothy explained about the collection, about absorbing sickness through touch. Harrington leans forward. "Eleanor, did the patients discuss this among themselves? Did you plan this together?" Eleanor looks confused. "Plan? No, doctor, we didn't need to plan. The rabbits told us what to do. Each one we held, we learned from. They showed us their deaths. We simply helped them achieve what they already wanted." "Rabbits can't communicate complex ideas," Harrington says carefully. "They're animals, Eleanor. They don't want death." "Then why did they come?" Eleanor asks. "The wild ones. Why did they hop through the windows at night? Why did they let us catch them so easily? They knew their purpose. They volunteered for it." Whitmore catches Harrington's eye, raises an eyebrow. "Shared delusion," his expression says. "Collective madness." They interview the other patients involved in the incidents. Each tells a similar story, with variations that somehow make the overall narrative more disturbing, rather than less. Mary Ashford, patient 131. "The first one I killed was an accident, truly. But when it died, I felt lighter, like something had transferred from me to it, like it had taken part of my burden. So I asked for another rabbit, and another. Each death helped." Victoria Green, patient 152. "The Bible is full of animal sacrifice. Abraham and Isaac, the Passover lamb. God demands blood to wash away sin. I gave him rabbit blood. 23 drops for 23 years of my life before the angels came. Now I'm clean." Catherine Moore, patient 145. "I abandoned my children because I wanted them dead. I couldn't bear them, couldn't stand their crying, their need. The rabbit attacked me because it knew. It saw the murder in my heart. I killed it in self-defense, but also in confession. I killed it for what I wanted to do to my children." Dorothy Wright, patient 138. "They're not really dead. They're transformed. Their deaths fed us, nourished us, made us strong enough to live. That's what therapy is, isn't it? Transformation through sacrifice." The patients who weren't directly involved in killing rabbits tell different but equally troubling stories. They describe watching the incidents, feeling drawn to participate, experiencing something like religious ecstasy when the animals died. Patient 144, Anna Simmons, says, "It was like communion, the body and blood of innocent creatures. We all partook, even those of us who didn't touch them." The investigation expands, beyond Ward C. Whitmore's men search the entire hospital grounds, looking for more bodies, more evidence of the patient's nocturnal rabbit hunting. They find warrens in the courtyard that have been systematically depleted. They find crude traps made from bent wire and stolen thread. They find, in Eleanor's cell, a journal hidden beneath her mattress. Harrington reads the journal with shaking hands. It's a detailed log of every rabbit Eleanor killed, starting with Pearl. Each entry includes the date, the method used, the lessons learned. The handwriting starts neat and degrades into frantic scrawls as the entries progress. The final entry, dated March 16th, the day before the mass killing, reads, 22 rabbits dead by my hand now. Each death easier than the last. Each death more necessary. Tomorrow will be the completion. Tomorrow I arrange them in the circle, the sacred geometry of ending. 23 for 23 weeks of pregnancy. 23 for the baby who chose death over life with me as its mother. When I finish, I will be pure again. empty again, ready to be filled with something better than grief. Dr. Harrington has saved me, though not in the way he intended. He gave me permission to practice death. Tomorrow I perfect it. There's nothing here about harming humans, Whitmore notes, reading over Harrington's shoulder. She's focused entirely on the animals. This time, Harrington says. But what about next time? What about when she's discharged, returns to society, and the grief returns? What will she practice on then? The legal questions prove thorny. Eleanor Blackwood and the other patients are already committed to Bedlam, already deemed insane and therefore not criminally responsible for their actions. They cannot be tried for killing rabbits. The animals are hospital property and the patients are wards of the institution. Technically, the hospital administration could press charges for destruction of property, but Dr. Hood refuses. It would destroy our reputation entirely, Hood tells Harrington privately. We're already fighting accusations of negligence. If we prosecute our own patients for acting out due to inadequate supervision, we admit culpability. Better to treat this as a tragic consequence of mental illness, contain the damage, and move forward. Move forward, Harrington repeats incredulously. 8 women have demonstrated an organized capacity for planned violence. Eleanor Blackwood has journaled her evolution as a killer. And you want to simply move forward? I want to protect this institution, Hood snaps. And I suggest you consider protecting yourself as well, Dr. Harrington. You designed this program. You introduced the animals. You ignored warning signs. If blame is to be assigned, a significant portion falls on you. The threat is clear. Harrington can either accept the institutional narrative, tragic accident, unforeseen consequence, no one really at fault, or he can be made the scapegoat. He chooses a third option. He resigns from Bethlem Royal Hospital on March 25, 1863, 8 days after the discovery. His resignation letter is brief and does not mention the rabbits. He requests his resignation be accepted immediately, without the customary notice period. Dr. Hood accepts with unseemly haste. The patients involved in the rabbit killings are transferred to the secure wards, separated from each other, denied access to any animals or potential weapons. Eleanor Blackwood is deemed too dangerous for the general population and placed in permanent isolation. Her discharge papers are revoked. Her husband, Thomas Blackwood, is informed that his wife will likely remain institutionalized for life. Thomas visits one final time in April 1863. Harrington, still wrapping up his affairs at the hospital, witnesses the visit from a distance. Thomas sits across from Eleanor in the visiting room, separated by a table bolted to the floor. He asks her why. Why did she do this? Why did she throw away her chance at freedom, at returning to him, at trying again for a family? Eleanor's response, recorded by the attending guard, is chilling in its simplicity. I already have a family, 23 children who taught me everything I needed to know. They're dead now, but death is just a different kind of life. I'll see them again, Thomas, when it's my turn to be helped along. Thomas Blackwood never visits again. He files for divorce in June 1863, citing his wife's permanent insanity as grounds. The divorce is granted without contest. The remaining patients gradually stabilize, separated from each other and from the triggering stimulus of the rabbits. Their violent impulses fade. Some are eventually discharged. Others remain at Bedlam for years, but none of them, in Harrington's follow-up research, ever speak about the rabbits again. It's as if those months never happened, erased from their memories like a fever dream. Except for Eleanor. Eleanor remembers everything. And according to the asylum records Harrington manages to access years later, she continues to request rabbits for the rest of her life. Small, soft creatures to care for, to comfort her, to teach her, as she says, more lessons about mercy. The requests are always denied. The Bedlam rabbit incident, as it becomes known in medical circles, sends shockwaves through the emerging field of psychiatric treatment. Though the hospital administrators try to suppress details, word spreads. Harrington's colleagues whisper about it at conferences. Medical journals publish veiled references to adverse outcomes in animal-assisted therapy without naming the institution or the specific events. The incident becomes a cautionary tale against rapid reform without adequate safeguards. The moral management movement, while well-intentioned, has assumed that kindness and environmental enrichment are universally beneficial. The rabbits prove otherwise. Sometimes, disturbed minds take tools meant for healing and transform them into weapons. In the immediate aftermath, several hospitals across Britain suspend their animal therapy programs. The Retreat at York, a Quaker institution known for progressive treatment, removes all animals from patient contact for 6 months while conducting safety reviews. The Surrey County Asylum ends its poultry keeping program, in which patients raise chickens for eggs and meat, after administrators realize they've been providing disturbed individuals with regular access to living creatures whose deaths they directly caused, even if for food. But the broader lesson, that mental illness can hijack therapeutic tools for destructive purposes, proves difficult to implement. How do you design treatment that cannot be subverted? How do you predict which patients will respond to therapy as intended and which will twist it toward darker ends? Harrington spends years grappling with these questions. After leaving Bedlam, he retreats from clinical practice, focusing instead on research and writing. His 1867 monograph, On the Paradoxical Outcomes of Moral Treatment in Cases of Melancholia and Mania, becomes influential in psychiatric circles, though it never explicitly mentions the rabbit incident. Instead, it discusses in theoretical terms how patients with violent ideation can use seemingly benign therapeutic activities, gardening, crafts, animal care, to rehearse and refine harmful behaviors. We must understand, Harrington writes, that the disturbed mind does not respond to therapeutic intervention as a passive recipient of healing. Rather, it actively engages with treatment, interpreting and reinterpreting therapeutic tools through the lens of its own disordered logic. What we intend as comfort may be experienced as provocation. What we offer as gentle companionship may be understood as opportunity for domination. The therapist must remain vigilant, not only for signs that treatment is failing, but for signs that treatment is succeeding in ways we never intended. The rabbit incident also influences the development of psychiatric assessment tools. If Eleanor Blackwood could appear so functional, so improved, so ready for discharge even while planning mass killing, then the existing methods for evaluating patient progress are fundamentally flawed. Psychiatrists begin developing more sophisticated interview techniques, looking for inconsistencies between reported feelings and observed behaviors, between stated intentions and underlying thought patterns. The concept of therapeutic subversion, patients using treatment modalities for destructive purposes, becomes recognized as a genuine clinical risk. Modern psychiatric facilities now carefully screen all therapeutic activities for potential misuse. Animal-assisted therapy, when used, involves strict supervision, careful selection of both animals and patients, and immediate removal of access if any concerning behaviors emerge. But perhaps the most profound impact is on the question of patient agency and responsibility. The Victorian era viewed the insane as fundamentally lacking in willpower and moral capacity. They were more like children or animals themselves, creatures operating on impulse and instinct rather than reason and planning. The Bedlam rabbits proved otherwise. Eleanor Blackwood and her fellow patients demonstrated significant capacity for planning, learning, cooperation, and delayed gratification. They tracked and caught wild rabbits over weeks. They practiced killing techniques to improve their efficiency. They coordinated the final arrangement without verbal communication, simply through shared understanding. This raises uncomfortable questions. If the patients were capable of such sophisticated organized behavior, were they truly insane? Or were they simply manifesting their mental illness through calculated action rather than disordered thought? The legal system still hasn't fully resolved this tension. Modern jurisprudence recognizes that mental illness doesn't eliminate criminal responsibility but rather exists on a spectrum. Some mentally ill individuals retain sufficient capacity for planning and moral reasoning to be held accountable for their actions. Others genuinely lack this capacity. Where patients like Eleanor Blackwood fall on this spectrum remains contested. She was clearly delusional, believing rabbits communicated with her, that killing them was therapeutic, that death was a mercy. But she was also clearly capable of extended planning, skill development, and achieving complex goals. In a strange way, the rabbit incident also validates some of Harrington's original insights. He believed that mental illness could be treated through environmental intervention and meaningful activity. He was right. The patients did engage meaningfully with the rabbits. They did develop skills and sense of purpose. They did experience symptom relief. The problem was that the treatment worked by channeling their disturbance into controlled, ritualized killing, rather than by resolving the underlying pathology. They got better at being disturbed, not less disturbed overall. This suggests a darker possibility, that some mental illnesses cannot be cured, only redirected. That therapy sometimes succeeds by providing safer outlets for dangerous impulses, rather than eliminating the impulses themselves. Modern treatment of certain personality disorders follows this logic, not trying to fundamentally change the person, but teaching them to satisfy their needs in less harmful ways. The rabbits were meant to be companions. They became sacrifices, and in becoming sacrifices they served a therapeutic purpose. just not the one anyone intended. The incident also reveals the power of collective delusion in institutional settings. The patients didn't develop their understanding of the rabbits individually. They taught each other, reinforced each other's interpretations, created a shared mythology about death and mercy and therapeutic transformation. Isolation might have prevented individual patients from acting on disturbed thoughts, but placed together in Ward C, they created an echo chamber where disturbed thoughts amplified and evolved into disturbed actions. Modern psychiatric facilities are keenly aware of this dynamic. Patients with similar delusions are often separated to prevent reinforcement. Group therapy is carefully structured to avoid participants encouraging each other's maladaptive patterns. The therapeutic community, so valued by reformers like Harrington, also poses risks when the community coalesces around shared pathology rather than shared recovery. Finally, the incident remains a reminder of the limits of professional expertise. Harrington was educated, well-meaning, progressive in his thinking. He followed the latest research, implemented evidence-based practices, carefully documented outcomes. And yet he catastrophically failed to recognize what was happening under his supervision. His journals from the period reveal a man who saw what he wanted to see. When patients killed rabbits, he interpreted it as cathartic release. When they improved behaviorally, he credited his therapeutic intervention. When they requested more rabbits, he saw engagement with treatment. He never stopped to consider that improvement in institutional behavior might mask deterioration in underlying thought patterns, that patients might become more functional in pursuit of disturbed goals, that his therapy was working exactly as Eleanor said, just not in the way he intended. The Bedlam rabbits taught psychiatry a lesson it still hasn't fully learned, that healing and harm can look remarkably similar when you're not paying attention to the right details, that progress can be measured in dead animals as easily as living ones, that the road to therapeutic hell is paved with soft, gentle, innocent creatures, whose deaths meant everything to disturbed minds and nothing to the doctors who provided them. What do you think drove Eleanor Blackwood to arrange 23 dead rabbits in a perfect circle? Was she practicing for something worse, or had the rabbits genuinely become her therapy, just in the most twisted way imaginable? Leave your theories in the comments below. And if you're interested in the darker chapters of medical history, make sure you're subscribed to the Fear Abbey, so you don't miss our next investigation into the treatments that were supposed to heal, but only taught patients new ways to harm. The line between therapy and rehearsal is thinner than we'd like to believe. Sometimes the tools we offer for healing become instruments of something else entirely. See you in the next video.